Hello, everybody. My name is Julien Matwawana. I'm the Executive Director of the African Nova Scotia Music Association and a music creative. And this is the Hidden Figures Show, music business on the world stage. This is where we pull the curtains back on the music industry and show the different career paths by talking to the people who do it. And who I have with me today is a very special guest, a friend of mine in the industry, Matt Gorman.
Great to be here, man.
Thank you for coming, man.
It's my pleasure.
I've been trying to get you on the show because I feel as though what you do is important, and I want the Black community, but also the greater community, to understand that there are so many different ways you can add value to the music space.
Yeah.
And you happen to do that through law.
That's right.
Essentially, we'll get right into it. How did you find your way into this career in the music space specifically?
Oh boy. So I started out as a musician. So I grew up playing piano. I did classical lessons and did my conservatory up to like grade 8 or something. And then I got into drums and guitar and bass and started playing rock bands at a young age in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. We had a really, really kick-ass music scene. And so I just really, really loved music and loved playing music. And then I eventually, for some reason, got into this idea of getting into law. And I thought to myself, hey, if I ever get into law, probably entertainment is where I'll go.
Did you always want to be a lawyer?
I kind of always did.
Okay.
Yeah, even in high school, for some reason, no lawyers in the family, no good family friends that are lawyers.
I actually want to be a lawyer too.
Yeah?
I got like 100 in law
amazing.
class in high school, and I was like, maybe I could do this.
Well, you did better
It
than
didn't
me.
materialize, but
Yeah. No, I mean, I always liked the idea of being in a position to help others and counsel somebody through a sticky situation. I was always interested in helping out young offenders. For some reason, that always became a passion and interest of mine at a young age. So I actually wanted to do criminal law at first. And my aunt, who's a musician in Toronto, she always was like, well, Matt, if you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be an entertainment lawyer. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm in Nova Scotia, if I'm not in LA or New York or Toronto, maybe I just can't do this. But slowly but surely, over time, I just had this passion to do it. And even though I started doing corporate commercial law, and then I got into like energy regulatory law, I just was like, you know what, if I don't do this now, I'm just not going to do it. And so I started my law firm, Ocean Town Music, which is where I did, all my music law stuff. So it was kind of separate and apart from the job that I had at the time. And then the clients started to come. I was doing more and more public speaking, more and more hustle. And then as things got busier and busier, I was like, okay, well, I'm either going to go out and do this on my own, or I'm going to bring it into a law firm. And eventually I did bring that into Cox & Palmer, which is where I work right now. So I essentially run their, entertainment law group. Although it's largely just me right now, but I guess we can call it a group.
But that's how it starts, though.
That's how it started.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, because you had the plan, you saw the void, and then you brought the idea to a firm that's already a bit more established than yours.
For sure.
Right, and I think it's a lot easier to start that department when you have the idea already versus, you know what I mean, the other way around, right? So you brought them an idea, you filled the void for them, so it was a seamless transition, probably.
No, 100%. And, it's great to be at a firm right now. There's very supportive, there's resources there to help me grow my practice and really put, I think, Nova Scotia on the world stage. I've got some incredible clients. I'm really honored and lucky enough to get some, to have, built this business. And yeah, I feel very honored and fortunate to be in the position I'm in right now. And whether I'm going to like Grammy Week or the Junos or whatever, I'm super proud that I'm in Nova Scotia and can do this. And yeah.
Yeah, no, it's important to me as an industry professional in Nova Scotia that we retain, all of our skilled workers and our industry professionals to be there as a representation, an example of what you can do in the industry. Matt, what would you say is the most enjoyable thing about what you do?
The most enjoyable thing is really interacting with my clients who I love and walking them through a deal. So sometimes what happens is there will be an artist that I admire and really, really enjoy working with. They'll give me a call and they'll be like, man, I have this piece of paper. Maybe it's like a record deal. Maybe it's a publishing deal. Something they've really worked towards, and maybe it's for a big sum of money. Maybe there's a big advance to walk, and they're feeling excited, but they're also feeling very overwhelmed or whatever. So to be in a position where I can walk them through that paperwork, where I can negotiate and advocate on their behalf, whether it's a small label or a big label, big publisher, small publisher, whatever, and to hopefully get the deal done, to have negotiated it successfully, to get them a bigger bag, to get them sort of better deal terms and have them walk away feeling super empowered. Like, there's not really a better feeling than that. Alternatively, it could be a young person that's new to the industry that knows absolutely nothing, that wants to call me for like a free consultation. I don't charge people. If they want to call me for half an hour and talk about music and music law and how do you make money, and I'm happy to do that always.
This is good to know. Don't blow up his phone, but if you do need real help and guidance, Matt is available to help you.
No, absolutely. I try to make myself available, but so on the other end of the spectrum, like a new developing artist, it gives me a call, and if I just have that 30-minute call and they walk away from that feeling empowered, feeling like they know what they're talking about a little bit, that's super great too. So I think there's a lot of great aspects of the job, but those are kind of two that come to mind.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the coin, what would you say is the most challenging thing about what you do?
Managing a big team can be very challenging. So for example, if there's a deal going on, a record deal, a publishing deal, maybe there's, a performance, one of my clients, Talk, performed at the NHL All-Stars game. There's always something going on behind the scenes, and there's always stakeholders. There's, the artists themselves, but then there's also their management team, and then there's the label on the other side. There's maybe a production company, like there's maybe a publisher involved. In certain kinds of deals, there can be a large number of stakeholders to manage. And sometimes people look at the lawyers, as they should, to navigate that and sort of get the deal done, but get it done fairly and get it done. A lot of pressure on you. So it can be, And sometimes some of this stuff can be done, well, sometimes some of this stuff needs to be done yesterday.
Yeah, unrealistic expectations.
Actually, there you go. That's another challenge, is unrealistic expectations to get something done that just can't get done that quickly. So that happens all the time. But you need to manage expectations as well as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as anybody. You need to manage expectations.
Great point.
One of my favorite mentors who works at Cox and Palmer with me, he always says, Matt, never overpromise and underdeliver. And I've never forgot that. You never overpromise and underdeliver.
It's a great rule of thumb.
It's a great rule of thumb no matter what profession you're in or what job you have or whatever. Just always keep your timeline in mind, what's within the art of the possible, and don't get yourself in a bind where you just can't deliver, because I think we've all been there and it's just hugely stressful.
Give yourself more time, and then, if you come under that time, right? Then you look like a rock star.
Totally.
Versus, kind of throwing yourself under the bus.
Absolutely.
So it's a good lesson, believe in yourself, of course,
Totally.
Believe you can get it done in the time frame that they want it, but give yourself a buffer for sure.
For sure. And don't get me wrong, sometimes and a lot of times I have to roll up my sleeves and you gotta work till midnight, 1, 2 a.m. Yeah, absolutely. It happens not too infrequently. So there's a time and a place for that. But when there's a demand that's just completely unrealistic, you've got to you've got to say so and put up those boundaries so you don't stress yourself out too much and drive yourself crazy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And in entertainment law, which is what you would say you're in, right?
Yeah.
Is it a good time to get into this space, into the industry? Like, is it a good time for someone interested in law to get into, I guess, that department in law?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably always a good time to get into entertainment law. And I get a lot of students, I think especially the last 6 months or so, I've been getting a lot of cold emails, cold calls from students at different law schools reaching out. I've got all these coffees booked over the next 2-3 weeks with students who want to talk about it.
That's great.
Which is a good thing. Like, I think there is enough work to do. My practice, I would like to think, is global. So a lot of my work is across Canada and into the United States. So it's not just Nova Scotia based.
Nice.
So I think you have to be okay with wanting to get out there and hustle. I do travel a bit. I go to Toronto fairly regularly, and I do conference speaking sort of all over the country, do a lot of online speaking. So I think that hustle is really required if you're going to stay here in Nova Scotia. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's always a good time to get into entertainment law. There's always creative people out there, and there's always creative people that need help, and they need guidance, and they need to learn about copyright. They need to learn how to protect themselves. So
yeah, I think that's that's probably more of the horror stories most of the horror stories that we hear in the music industry is that people
Yeah.
don't really have their, their business right, and they don't review contracts, and they sign deals, they sign their lives and rights away, and they end up, kind of complaining about it on the back end.
Yeah.
When if, there's more proactivity versus reaction,
Yeah,
it would have
totally.
been,
100%.
hanging out with people like yourself would have helped mitigate that situation.
Yeah.
So
Well, to that point, sometimes I'll get a call from somebody. I'll get a bunch of different calls for a bunch of different things, but sometimes I get a call and someone will ask, "How do I get out of my deal that they signed last
he signed
year?"
it, right? He signed it.
And so those become a bit challenging. Those files become a bit challenging, but
I can imagine.
it happens fairly regularly.
I would say,
that
yeah.
someone finds himself in a deal that they've signed and they didn't get adequate legal representation or whatever, and we're kind of having to go through it and figure out how to get out of it, or go through a pretty tough negotiation, because once you have a signed contract, even if it's not a great drafted contract,
Yeah.
it's still challenging.
You don't have the leverage in that situation.
You don't have
a
much
lot of times.
leverage, yeah. Subject to unusual circumstances, but yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most notable thing you've been a part of in entertainment law to this point?
So, I had 2 clients that were nominated for Grammys, which was really great. That was super cool. And even 2024 Junos in Halifax, we're all excited about that. I think collectively among my clients, I counted like 14 or 15 Juno nominations.
That's amazing.
Which I'm really, really proud of, because there was a point in time when I had nobody, and then I did one conference, and that turned into 2 or 3 clients. And then you did something else, and that turned into a few more local clients or whatever. And slowly but surely, you do really good work. You manage expectations. You hustle.
Yeah.
You're good to people. You conduct yourself professionally, honorably, etc. Things will grow, and I'm really proud to see that they have grown. So I think that's my probably biggest accomplishment professionally so far, is just seeing all these clients get their noms.
Yeah,
really
go
fun.
from where they were.
A few
when
Nova
you met
Scotia
them to-
folks as well, which is great to see.
Yeah, no, it's always great to see people from, the hometown getting recognized for the work that they put in over the last little while. And, just one of the points that you made, it's like, it's important to make sure you're in the rooms to meet new clients, to meet people who you can collaborate with potentially, or perhaps give you a different perspective, and who thinks differently than you, or someone you can work with and maybe build with, so that you guys can be successful together. So I know it's a great point.
I know you got other questions, but you're making lots of good points here. To that point, like, I always think to myself, if someone gives me a call, I don't care who they are, they could be the next global superstar.
They could be.
I seriously always think about that, and I have some clients that have gone on to win Juno nominations.
Especially if they're reaching out to you, right? Like, just that step in, like, to me, when someone sends me an email inquiring about how to kind of push their career forward, or like any resources that may be available, like, a lot of people don't even take that step. A lot of people would rather sit back and wonder why things aren't coming to them. But if you just reach out to people who have more information than you, or someone who may seem like they know a little bit more than you do, right? Like, then, like, that's a huge step. And that's being teachable, and that's, wanting to develop and reach your full potential. So, like, that's a great point, right? Where it's like, someone reaches out to a lawyer, like, chances are usually they're serious, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, 100%. I always take that seriously, and always give them the time they deserve, because you just never know where their careers are going to go. And like I say, a number of examples in my career to date, as I said earlier, I've gone on to earn Juno nominations, etc. They started from very humble beginnings, but I gave them good advice. They trusted me, and we just stuck together. And I've been with them ever since. So some clients, years. And so you just never know where someone's going to go.
Absolutely.
And that's a great thing about the industry.
So I know, you do have to go through law school and get your law degree. So people can probably imagine what sort of education you have. But I guess in the music space, you operate in entertainment law, like, what has been more valuable for you, your education or your experience?
Oh, man. Well, I would say, truthfully, hands down, experience.
Yeah.
You've got to go to be a lawyer. You've obviously got to be you've got to go to law school. You got to get through, law school and the bar exam and do your articling and all that stuff. And don't get me wrong, like I learned a ton in law school.
Yeah.
I went to law school abroad at the University of Leeds in England. I did Dalhousie, poli-sci, went to England for law school, came back, got qualified to work in Canada. I was tempted to stay in the UK, but thought, you know what, I'm from Nova Scotia, I gotta come back.
Actually going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go right from high school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally. It was, but one of the best experiences of my life was going over there. It was hugely challenging, challenging emotionally, challenging academically. The first time kind of was out on my own for, a long extended period of time, et cetera. Yeah. So did all that stuff. And then, after I got called to the bar, joined Cox and Palmer, their corporate commercial group, which was, doing corporate commercial law was a really, really great way to get some really good, useful skills. But you don't really learn those in law school per se. You learn maybe how to think like a lawyer. You learn maybe how to manage your time. You learn the, legal theory, and you learn about key cases, which are all very, very important. But then when you go to a law firm and you start articling, and then you're an associate and the training wheels are off.
Yep.
And the clients come and give you a call and you got to give them advice. You really learn how to be a lawyer by being a lawyer at a law firm or going out on your own or doing whatever. So that would be my answer.
What would you say is the distinction between like the book smarts and the lived experience? Would you say, like, what sort of skills does one need to, I guess, excel at what you do? Would you say?
Really good question. I think in law school you need, academic smarts to do well.
Yeah.
I think law school is no different than anything else. I think to be successful in, let's just say, private practice at a law firm, you need more than that, I think. I think you need the ability to empathize. You need the ability to chat with clients, some of whom might be very difficult to deal with, and you need to kind of extract the key facts and figure out how to best help them in the most efficient way. So you're managing a lot of personalities. Time management is important. I mean, in law school, in law school you learn time management, but in private practice, a busy private practice, it's like a whole new kind of ball game.
I can imagine.
And there's sometimes a lot on the line as well. Not only that, but you might have some clients that are more demanding than others. Well, you do have some clients more demanding than others. So
Absolutely.
Again, it's managing not only the personalities, but the workload and the timeline and all that stuff.
You're working on different cases simultaneously, I'd imagine.
100%. Yeah, many files all at the same time. So to answer your question, I think there's a different skill set for sure. I think the academic smarts, I think you need for anything, in any venture. But in private practice and law school, you really need some additional tools in the toolbox, I think, to successfully to build a successful practice, I think.
Gotcha. And I'm wondering, can you describe a significant mistake you may have made early in your career?
Right. Okay. Significant mistake. I did make a mistake early on. This is the first time I ever talked about this. Early on, it was like I was, I think, a 1 or 2 year associate. I was doing real property law, which I don't do anymore. Obviously, not my favorite area of practice. But I did make a mistake on one file, and it got resolved. But at the time, it was not a small mistake.
Yeah.
It definitely got resolved and all good there. But it was a great learning experience. When you're a lawyer or when you're any professional and you make that mistake, it's a bit of a gut-wrenching sort of thing. You're sort of like, everyone's human. Everyone's going to make mistakes. I always remembered that one, though, because it could have been worse than it turned out to be. And it was just a very quick reminder really early on in my career that, attention to detail is everything. And, things can go poorly really quickly. And so you really need to pay attention to detail. You can't really ever over prepare for anything in a way. And you just gotta maintain your focus and composure. Yeah. Now, one thing I learned from that is that you never hide a mistake. If a mistake is made, you own up to it.
Yeah.
And if I tried to hide that mistake, that's when it would have gone bad. But I knew I made that mistake. So number one, you identify the mistake. Number two, you own up to it and you figure out, okay, well, now what? So you find your mentors, you find someone who's experienced in the area to help you work through it. And I think just that process in and of itself really taught me a great lesson. And that was year 1 or 2. That was really early on.
Yeah.
I've never forgotten that.
I've learned, I've learned, I've learned the hard way that it's like you don't try and fix a mistake by yourself either. Like if you can kind of let your team know that a mistake has been made and all tackle it together to mitigate it and resolve it and find the solution, then it looks like you're human, like you said. It looks like you owned up to it, you're taking accountability, but when you try and hide it and like try and make it better behind closed doors, and that's where you get in trouble. So
100%.
that's a great lesson from you.
And I say that to my kids all the time as well. I have 2 kids, 4 and 8. It doesn't matter if you're a kid or if you're like 38. I always say to my kids, if you make a mistake, you will always be in less trouble if you come and tell me about it.
Yeah.
I always say that to them. I never try to hide it. Just 2 days ago, I was chatting with a client who was having issues with his manager, and his manager was actually partaking in some shady stuff. And he could have got ahead of it. He was facing some personal issues as a manager, and he could have got ahead with it. He could have got ahead of it by disclosing the problem, being honest about it. But it sounds like it wasn't disclosed and it was hid, and over time it just gets worse and worse and worse. So anyway, and
a similar question, but I feel like it's an important question, especially those who are getting into the music industry, and it's a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Not everybody's going to be able to work for a established corporation and have a career, but we do want to see more of that. But I'm just wondering, have you experienced any setbacks in your career that ended up being an advantage?
Setbacks, well,
something that happened that may have seemed like the end of the world at the time, but because you got that lesson, it's something that prepared you for the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what kind of comes to mind is as an entertainment lawyer, I mean, I'm speaking to a lot of potential clients, and not every client's going to go with you. There's other entertainment lawyers out there, and sometimes I feel like I'm interviewed by a lot of clients and their teams, and more often than not, I'm fortunate enough that works out.
Yeah.
But there were a few occasions where there were sizable clients and they didn't go with me, and I have no idea why. It was super respectful. And in fact, other members of that person's team have actually come over to me since, but not the artists themselves. But for me, that was devastating at the time, because here I am trying to build a practice.
Yeah.
And I'm craving that validation. Like, you need that validation over and
every
over and
no
over
does
again.
hurt, even if you do, move past it quickly.
And so for me at the time, the worst thing in the world was to have somebody I communicated with and I gave my best pitch to them, and they still went with somebody else. And for me, that was like hugely, now I'm okay to deal with that sort of thing, because there's lots of reasons why people go to different lawyers or whatever. But there was 1 or 2 examples in particular where it was a bit devastating for me, but I just worked harder. I just always worked harder. And on one occasion, actually, that artist a few years later came to me afterwards. But at the one I haven't chatted with since. But that really taught me that, just work hard. Setbacks are going to happen. That motivation, you never know why someone's going to choose you or not choose you or whatever. You just have no control over it. All you can do is control the quality of work you do. Put that hustle in. Put the time in, because nothing is going to prepare you for those big clients than the time, right?
Yeah, it's just that consistency, right? Like, even though you may get 10 no's, but like that one yes could, change your practice, right?
No, for sure. And in hindsight, like when I think of that particular client, they were a really big client. I was really early on in my career. Maybe I wouldn't have even had the tools to deal with it at that time, So, but by losing, that potential client, I just really, really went for it. And I really upped my game, and so that's what comes to mind as far as setbacks are concerned. I'm sure there's others. But
gotcha. Yeah, no, that was a great example. Lots of lessons and advice in there for people who may catch this episode.
Because not everything's going to go your way. Yeah. When you start a business, not everything is going to go your way, as you know.
Most things won't go your way. I just think, but it's like, sometimes it going your way once changes everything, right?
Absolutely.
So that's why you have to keep going and be consistent and not let the no's or the setbacks break you, right?
100%.
It should be your motivation to be like, it's like eventually the universe is going to move out of your way, and people are going to see your value and
100%.
see what you bring to them.
Yeah.
But the question that I know a lot of people always want to know, especially in music, is how does one make money in your space
Yeah.
that you operate in music? Like throughout the like in
Yeah.
the entertainment law, how do you make money?
So me personally, so
Your role, yeah.
so as a lawyer, I make money through my time essentially. I have an hourly rate, and so I bill that way. More often than not, I don't charge my hourly rate. More often than not, I charge fixed fees.
Gotcha.
Because I think that's better for the client. The client always likes, and I'm at the point in time where if someone gives me a management contract or a record deal or something, I know more or less how long it's going to take me.
Yeah.
And so I'll give a fixed fee. For other certain kinds of things, it's impossible to know what it's going to cost. It could be 3 hours, it could be 12 hours. Some files I just don't know, and in those cases, I charge my hourly rate. So that's how I make money. I have a firm structure as well, so I get paid from my firm. But at the end of the day, I make money by billing my time and get revenue that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what type of lifestyle changes should one expect getting into this type of role as someone in entertainment law or law in general, if you want to say?
So I think from a lifestyle perspective, you really have to be ready to hustle. You can't really sit in your bedroom and that's my perspective. You really have to get out there. Entertainment law, especially, like, no offense to the tax lawyers out there, or the corporate transactional lawyers, but even some of that, there's a business development aspect, right?
Absolutely.
If you're a tax lawyer, maybe you'll go to the annual Canadian tax conference, or so there's always a requirement for business development, no matter what business you're in or what profession you're in. Entertainment law, I think you have to do just a little bit more of it for sure. There's nothing that beats that face time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to Toronto, a fair bit. I was at Grammy Week last week in Los Angeles, and just going to a few of those parties and seeing some clients that I've never met face to face, and solidifying those relationships. Yeah, because I have some clients, for example, in Los Angeles that I've never met before. I've been working with them for like 2-3 years.
Wow.
So to be able to go there and shake their hand and hang out with them and meet their spouse, and in one case their kids, like, it really solidifies that relationship.
Yeah, it makes it stronger. And
absolutely. And when you're out to a conference, you never know who you're going to run into. Whether you're getting a drink at the bar or coffee somewhere at the coffee shop down from the conference hotel, I don't know how much business has come from just being there and being out there. So from a lifestyle perspective, you have to get used to the hustle, I think.
No, that's a great point. I mean, in most, because even though you do work under an umbrella, it's pretty much your own business.
Yeah.
Right. So you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, and when you're an entrepreneur, you got to hustle. You got to, go hunt for essentially what you're gonna, put on the table that night, and make sure that you stay consistent. Again, that word comes up, consistency, because you never know, like, clients could find someone else, or there may be something that come up that is uncontrollable. So you have to continue feeding that pipeline, right? And
totally.
And making connections. You mentioned someone who may have more of a practice where you're sitting in front of the computer, but they may go to a conference, and sometimes it's not even about getting a client. Sometimes it's about getting information from someone that you didn't have before. In that sort of way. And that could be your form of hustling if you're more of a stationary person,
100%.
right? And because you can always learn something new, and you can always meet someone who can give you a different perspective. So that's a great point.
And the question I thought you were going to ask earlier was, how do you make money in music as a musician? I'm happy to answer the question about how I make money, but maybe that's another conversation. I don't know.
I mean, you can answer it. I only have a couple more questions for you, so feel free to answer, because I'm sure everybody wants to know that answer as well.
No, for sure. I mean, what's fascinating about music is there are lots of different revenue streams. So I mean, as a performing artist, you can make money from, obviously, digital streaming, selling records. Obviously, that that revenue has gone down over time compared to what it used to be. Obviously, there's live performance revenue. Like, if you can book a show with 50 people, 100 people even, you can make money from that. There's music publishing revenue, so that's when you actually write the song. So you'll get recording royalties when you create the record, the sound recording. But if you're also the songwriter, you also will own a piece or all of the music publishing, and so you'll make money on the back end from exploitation of the song.
Gotcha.
I'm also seeing clients get endorsement deals that might have a big social media following on TikTok or Instagram or something. Endorsement deals are becoming big as well. endorsement, branding deals, et cetera. So lots of different ways to make money.
Yeah, it's these days especially, right? It's super important to know the different ways that you can
Yeah.
drive revenue for your brand.
Yeah.
Because it's it's a completely different music industry than it was even like 10 years
Yeah.
ago, right?
No, for sure. And I work a lot with producers nowadays. I manage a producer as well, but on the legal side, I also act for a lot of producers. Producers can make a lot of money because in just one production agreement, they can drive different revenue streams. So for example, let's just say someone cooks up a beat.
Yeah.
And then that beat is placed on, Metro Boomin track or whatever. Well, they're going to get probably sound recording royalties. They're going to get publishing royalties for being a songwriter as well. They're going to get sound exchange royalties. So that's for the public. That's for the digital public performance of the sound recording.
Gotcha.
And depending on the artist and the producer and what they can command, they'll get like an upfront advance. And so that could be anywhere from a few $100 to, I've got some producers that can command 10, 15, 20 USD, 10 to 15, 20 grand USD per beat.
Wow.
So for producers, there's many different revenue streams. And going back to what I like about the industry and the education piece, like I have a lot of discussions with producers and it blows their mind when they find out like how many different revenue streams are available to them just from like one beat.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that's common knowledge. I think people are surprised at how many different revenue streams you can kind of branch off of your own brand, like one brand, right?
Yeah.
I think people think that they have to kind of live double lives instead of, kind of milking that one brand that they have.
Yeah, totally.
No, it's a great answer, great advice, and great information. Couple more questions for you, then I'll let you get out of here.
Sounds
I know
good.
you're a busy man. What would you say are other positions in the industry you would consider to be hidden or behind the scenes but significant?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess from my perspective, nothing is too hidden. So, but if I'm looking at it from the perspective of someone that's maybe not in the industry, or they've got they're involved in a small aspect of the industry. Producers, producers are significant positions in the industry, and everyone's looking for good producers. Engineers. Managers.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking for really good managers that are typically hidden types of positions.
Yeah, it's not front facing.
No.
And that's essentially what this show is about, right? Like us showing the significance of folks who operate kind of more behind the scenes in music and build the infrastructure and make sure that they're advocating for artists and making sure that the people who are front facing are able to show their gift in the best possible way and so that they can reach their full potential.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's lots of positions in the industry. So like I say, producers, engineers, managers, agents, booking agents. If you want to go the more corporate route and start your own label or work at another label, there are A&Rs or artists and repertoires, I guess. But really their job is talent finding. It's oftentimes talent finding, but then when the artist gets into like cutting a record or making a project, they're actually oftentimes managing that project as well and helping them creatively through that project. Oftentimes you'll hear an artist say, "Oh, so-and-so's my A&R." Really what they're doing is they're helping them kind of creatively. These are fairly hidden jobs if you're not kind of in the industry, and I see them now on email chains, given certain deals or whatever. So, lots of different jobs out there in the music industry, and
those are all great.
Folks should hit me up. They should hit you up. If they're interested in it. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So I like what you're doing because you're going to schools and stuff and talking about the industry, right?
Yeah,
I think that's I was going to say hugely important. It's critical because you don't know what you don't know. For example, like I grew up playing music and drums, piano, guitar, etc. I wish I knew what producers did.
Yeah.
Like I wish I knew what a producer was when I was 15.
Same.
Because I would have gotten into that in a heartbeat. I would have been like, what? There's a role where someone can kind of like be the director of a record and kind of play different instruments and
just kind of use your ear to create something, right? And direct people. It's like a Quincy Jones, right? Like he is a great master of characters and personalities and making sure he plays people to their strength. And you know, it's kind of like a music supervisor, right? Someone who
music
listens to
supervisor.
music and is like, oh, that would be great on that scene. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
so having and people don't know about these positions in
Yeah.
the music industry because they're not on stage, they're not celebrities, so
Yeah.
to say, but they do, you know, kind of narrate the soundtrack of your life in a
Yeah.
sense, and commercials and movies and
Totally.
TV shows that you know watch all the time. But last question,
Sure.
and it's one that I ask all the people I talk to is, now that you work in the music industry, what would you say is the biggest misconception about the industry in your experience?
Maybe what comes to mind is that it's, you know, it's always glamorous or something. You know, you see artists in their social media feed, and you see artists get awards and do big performances and, you know, great sounding records. And so it is a very kind of glamour, you know, it's, you know, from one perspective, it is very glamorous in that way because most people only kind of see one side of it. They see that great performance,
On
they
the
see that
outside looking in.
video, you know, they see that perfect TikTok video or that perfect Instagram picture or whatever. But behind the scenes, there's always something going on. Behind the scenes, there's a contract, there's a deal, there's all the crap that someone went through to go on tour, or all the crap someone's going through on tour.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a family back home that's, you know, missing the artist, or team members that are struggling. There's so much going
So
on
much you don't
behind the
see.
scenes. And it takes so much to make that stuff happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's all bad, don't get me wrong.
Of course not.
But I mean, I think probably the biggest misconception is maybe how much work happens behind the scenes to make all that stuff happen. So that, yeah, that's how I'd probably answer that one.
No, it's great, and I think people, it's important for people to understand that, you know, the celebrity that you see or the artist that you admire, you know, they're making sacrifices to deliver this art,
Absolutely.
to be at this concert and perform for you, and
Yeah.
you know, a lot of the time. So you know, it's a great point that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are some sacrifices, there are some hard times, there are some, you know, things that you kind of have to brush off and go do what you love anyway.
For
right?
sure. And I mean, anything worth doing is going to require a lot of work.
Absolutely.
And, you know, if you're passionate about it, just go and do it and work and work and work. And don't let anyone tell you you can't do it.
Well, thank you so much for
man.
coming through.
Yeah, good chatting.
Matt Gorman,
Funny.
entertainment lawyer, Cox and Palmer.